Alright, hi everyone, welcome back to part 3 of my first look through the Thousand Suns Codex. Now, I actually have the Codex now. It took me a lot longer to get it than I hoped. I was hoping I'd get it Saturday, but it took me a bit longer. But here we are, I actually have the Codex now. I'm not just looking through notes that I've written down off of other people's videos. Now we're on the Elites now, and we're going to start off with the Hellbrute. Now, I'm a huge fan of the Hellbrute personally. It's one of my favourite units. It always has been throughout Warhammer. Many editions, it's been pretty much useless. It's been really terrible. This crappy little armour value 12, 3-hole pointed waste of time. But since 8th, they've actually become quite useful. And 9th edition is the same. They are unfortunately not something you have any stratagems for in this codex. The Chaos Space Marines, of course, you have the Fire Frenzy. Death Guard, you had Fire Fever. There is no Hellbrute stratagem in the Thousand Suns Codex, unfortunately. The best you're going to get is a 5+ Feel No Pain, essentially, against Mortal Wounds for 1 CP. I don't know how many mortal wounds are going to be incoming to your Dreadnought personally. I don't think it's a stratagem you're going to see very often or use very often. You have that, but it's definitely a shame that you don't have any sort of Fire Frenzy type stratagems that all the other Hellbrutes have. That's a shame. I don't know if it was just an oversight or if it was intentional, they just didn't bother giving it to him, but that's a shame. Now, like I said, I love Hellbrutes. They look awesome, they're really cool, they're a classic unit, they're a really good way to just make anything, I don't know, look classic, look Space Marine-y. They just look good, especially if you've got an infantry-based army with loads of Rubric Marines and Terminators. Having a couple Dreadnoughts makes it look good. And I am saying Dreadnoughts because I don't believe Hellbrutes exist. They're Dreadnoughts. Now, they're actually quite nice for the Thousand Suns because you get a 5+ invulnerable save on basically everything. If it's Arcana or Astartes, you've got a 5+ invulnerable save on it. So not only do they have the -1 damage special rule, monstrous resilience they call it for Chaos Space Marines, but you have a 5+ invulnerable save. Now this makes your Dreadnoughts really good. I mean, if anything, even better than the Death Guard Dreadnoughts, because they don't have anything special. They don't get -2 damage or anything. They're just -1 with monstrous resilience rather than disgustingly resilient. So you're better than Death Guard Dreadnoughts because you have the 5+ invulnerable save and the -1 damage. I don't think you cost any more. I haven't noticed the points change. So I think it's a really good place to be. They've got 5 attacks base now. I guess that's 1 up from 4. Everything seems to have gained an attack because you've lost Death to False Emperor. I run 3 for my army personally. I have 3 of the other Forge World, the old out of production Forge World Dreadnoughts that they used to do. All armed with twin link las cannons and fists. They have the chain fists, but I just use them as fists. That's my loadout that I like. It comes to, I think, 135 points for the Dreadnought, which, toughness 7, 8 wounds, 3+ armour save, 5+ invulnerable save, -1 damage, 2 las cannon shots, and 5 strength 12, AP -3 damage, 3 attacks in close combat. I think it's absolutely brilliant. They're quite small, you can hide them easily. They've only got a 6-inch movement. They used to have an 8-inch movement. I don't know why, they just kind of did have an 8-inch movement because they're supposed to be faster, I guess, but they're down to 6 inches now, which is actually a change that I think could be overlooked by a lot of people who are just going to assume that they move 8 inches still, but they don't. So now they're on par with Space Marines, and I haven't got to put up with my friend complaining to me every game that for some reason they just move 8 inches compared to their 6. Now, the weapons, there have been some changes with the weapons. Previously, you were able to arm them with 2 power scourges, which is something I liked to do because it gave them an insane 11 or 12 attacks or something. You can't do that now. It's just the 1 power scourge now, although I still think they're worth taking. You're still going to be strength 7, AP -2, damage 2, with 3 additional attacks. So, whether you use 5 fist attacks and 3 more of them, or you just make all 8 attacks with the power scourge, it's quite good. It is a shame, though, that it's been downgraded to just +1 strength. They used to be +2 strength, you were strength 8, so you were getting the good 2s to wound off against Marines. That changed with the Death Guard. However, the Death Guard it didn't matter for because they were -1 toughness. The Thousand Suns Dreadnought, it doesn't give you -1 toughness. So actually, against Marines and stuff, they're strength 7 now. It does hurt them more. And I actually would go so far as to say I wouldn't bother with the Power Scourge now. I think that I'm going to just go for the Fist and really, try to guarantee that damage with the extra strength and the extra damage point. But if you want to risk the 3+s, I just feel that 3+s don't often go very well. Now my recommended build is Twin Link Las Cannon and Fist. That's what I think is good. They can move and fire now on BS 3+, so there's no problem with you running across the battlefield shooting the Las Cannons and then smashing things in combat with the Power Fist. You can shoot your Las Cannons in close combat, which is brilliant. Their core, of course, I tend, regardless of which army I'm playing, I am a big fan of 3 Dreadnoughts, maybe more, but 3 Dreadnoughts and a Demon Prince because they're core, so they benefit from the rerolls from the Demon Prince and they can hide the Demon Prince. I like to put 1, 2, 3 and a Demon Prince behind them. Brilliant, run it across the table, shooting as you go, then get into combat, smash stuff up. Really good. That's how I like to use Dreadnoughts, but you can just have them hang back too if you want to. Really, really solid. I never have much time for things like missile launchers, Reaper auto cannons, even twin heavy bolters. I don't see any point, guys. I think it's the twin Las Cannon and the Fist. The hammer, it's strength ×2, AP -4, damage D6, which it's all right, but it's -1 to hit, so you're hitting on 4+s. I've never considered the AP -4 versus AP -3 and the D6 damage versus 3 damage to be worth -1 to hit. If it was D3 +3, I might go for it, but it's not. And on a D6, you've got a 50-50 chance of rolling the same, or worse, essentially, a 1 or 2 or 3, and being -1 to hit for essentially an equal or worse damage output. So you're rolling it hoping for a 4, 5 or 6 to get the big damage, but even then you've probably missed a couple of attacks anyway. So I don't think it's worth it. But yeah, generally my opinion on Dreadnoughts is great, and their Frenzy rule, it's just great now, it's brilliant. So it's got a buff, you've seen it with the Death Guard already. If it's got 7 or fewer wounds, so basically as soon as it's lost 1 wound, you get to reroll wound rolls of 1, which is brilliant for shooting and close combat. It's epic. If you've got them shooting their Las Cannons, you're rerolling hits for your Demon Prince or Exalted Sorcerer or whatever it might be, and rerolling 1s to wound. And if they're in combat, same thing with their Fists. Really brilliant, solid, reliable unit, and the 5+ invulnerable save. I think, personally, I think that makes Thousand Sun Dreadnoughts a top choice because they're pretty resilient now. Very effective, quite cheap. I think they're good. And then we're on to these Scarab Occult Terminators. These are a welcome addition. I enjoyed these when they put them in back in 8th edition. Or was it 7th even? It was 7th, wasn't it? We got these. And then Death Guard were later. Yeah, 7th edition. I enjoyed them. They're a nice addition. They're very nice looking Terminators. I wasn't the biggest fan of them in 8th edition because Power Swords were not something I really enjoyed. They just weren't effective enough. They weren't strength +1 at the time, so they were just strength 4, AP -3, damage 1. You had no options to give them, Power Fists or Chain Fists or anything else. So I wasn't. They were kind of a risk for me. They had some decent shooting with the Inferno Combi Bolters, but if they got stuck in combat, they tended to struggle pretty quickly to inflict damage against anything, especially vehicles and things. If you got in combat with something like that, the Dreadnought or something, they just couldn't handle it. But now they've really updated their Kopeshes. The Kopeshes are even better than regular Power Swords. They're basically mastercrafted Power Swords. They're +1 strength, AP -3, damage 2. Now this is brilliant. You don't want your elite heavy 40-point guys chopping 1 wound off a time at Space Marines. Just chopping 1 hit kills through Space Marines. It's brilliant. It's exactly what you want. Strength 5 now, so hitting on 3s, wounding on 3s, AP -3, basically no armor save, 6 up saves, and damage 2. It's brilliant. It's perfect. Makes them very reliable. I would now risk taking them for the points, and of course the comb bolters still the same, 4 shots because you're a Terminator, AP -2, damage 1, pretty good, very nice. They're not too expensive, they're only 40 points, so 5 of them, 200 points, easy enough. It only costs you 5 points to add in a Reaper Soul Cannon, Soul Reaper Cannon, which I think is worth doing. That's 5 additional shots. strength 6, AP minus 3, damage 1. Now, the Hellfire Missile Racks, never been a fan of the Hellfire Missile Racks. You can take them on 1 guy per 5, same as the Soul Reaper Cannon, or 2 guys in 10. And all you get is it's heavy 2, strength 8, AP minus 2, damage D3. I've never been a fan of this. It's the kind of petty firepower that I wouldn't bother with because it just costs you points and ultimately probably isn't going to reward you that much. 2 shots per guy at BS3+. Basically what that means in game terms is you've missed once. And now you're wounding on 3s probably, maybe shooting Marines and you're wounding them on 2s, but you're wounding on 2s or 3s if it's a vehicle. So let's say you get another wound, it's only -2, so they've got a good chance of making a 5-up save anyway, and then you're only D3 damage, you're probably going to roll a 1 or a 2. It's just that chipping petty damage that I personally don't like to bother with, although I do see a lot of other YouTubers on bat reps and things, they do go for it. The kind of people that go for, well, Blight Launchers actually are quite good now because they're flat damage too, but last edition I wasn't a fan of the Blight Launchers because again, low strength, low AP, D3 damage, strength 6, AP minus 2, D3 damage, 1 reliable, tiny petty plinking off wounds type damage. They're okay now, they're flat damage too. I wish these were flat damage too. I'd probably be a bit more positive if they were, but you know how it is, 2 shots, you miss once, you might get a wound. They'll probably make their save. If they don't, you're still only going to get, maybe one damage or 2 damage through. They're just not great, and they cost you 10 points a squad. If that's cheap enough for you, then maybe you want to do that. But this army is so expensive and so elite in its units that I kind of look at these armies as trying to save all the points I can because, not buying 2 health. Not buying 2 Hellfire Missile Racks is basically 1 more Rubric Marine, and I'd rather have 1 more Rubric Marine personally. But that's up to you. That's just my opinion on the Hellfire Missile Rack. Now, a lot of the stratagems, they essentially share with Rubric Marine, so if you've watched the Rubric Marine video, you've probably heard most of these stratagems already, so I'm just going to run through them quickly, because a lot of it is honestly the same. You have Unwavering Phalanx. Now, when I talked about this for the Rubric Marines, I did call this the Terminator stratagem because it's only 1 command point for units of 5, which for me is perfect for Terminators. And it's, of course, -1 damage. So if you're hit with with 2 damage weaponry, or even better, damage 3 weaponry, 1 CP for a unit of 5 or less, and you just reduce the damage by 1. So it could mean that you're reducing damage 3 to 2 and saving a Terminator with each failed save, or you're reducing damage 2 to 1 and you're even harder to chip down, so now you need actually 3 wounds to get a 3 rather than 2, and you get your +1 armor save, so you may be keeping your 2+ armor save a bit longer, especially if you're on cover or something. So that's a good one. You've got Wrath of the Wronged. Wrath of the Wronged is the 2 command points veterans +1 to wound. Definitely good if you're maybe chopping some Marines up with your Kopeshes and you want to wound on 2s, or even if you're shooting your combi bolters. They're only strength 4 base, so getting this off to wound Marines on 3+ would be nice. Of course, if you were running a, what are they called? I want to say Malignant Plaguecaster, but they're not. The Malefic Pact guy. He can make bolters strength 5, so you could use him to make the bolters strength 5, use Wrath of the Wronged, now you're wounding on 2s with your shots, 4 shots each, rapid fire combi bolters, so you're getting 20 shots out of the 5-man unit, unless you've taken a Soul Reaper cannon, that's different, but let's say you're getting 20 shots out of the 5-man unit. That's quite good. You could spend a CP on Infernal Fusillade, which would give you 1 more shot and make that 25 shots. In the last video, I did call this more of a Rubric Marine stratagem because I think you're just going to get more out of it, making, say, 20 rapid-fire Rubric shots into 30, 18 into 27. But compared to making 20 shots into 25, it seems a bit less. Just using it on 5 Terminators because that's only 5 extra shots. Where if you were using it on a unit of 10 Rubric Marines, that would be 9 extra shots. So it just seems like it's better points spent. But you have it if you want to use it. You have Implacable Guardians, which is 1 CP. The character within 3 inches can't be targeted, even if it's closer than your unit. So again, that's good. If personally, it kind of sucks if you're deep striking down maybe a Terminator character and the Terminators themselves. It kind of sucks that you always have to keep the Terminator character a little bit further back than the rest of them. Really, you would like him at the front. So, if you wanted to, you could use this in case you fail your charge. You'll be a bit more protected. You're more likely to use this, I think, with Rubric Marines as part of your main battle line, because then you can have characters, sorcerers, demon princes, whatever, in front of them and able to charge a bit more freely. Whereas the Terminators, if you're deploying them by deep strike and that sort of thing, I feel like you're more likely to be in a better position anyway, but you have it if you need it. You've got now inescapable forewarning. Inescapable forewarning is more, I think, for battle line units like Rubric Marines, but you could definitely use it for Terminators as well. It's essentially a case of intercepting units that have come in from reserves. Two command points. If a unit comes in from reserves within 18 inches of a Psychic character, any other Astartes, Arcana Astartes unit that's within 6 inches of that character and within 18 inches of the unit that came in can make a shooting attack against them. I think this is, because Rubric Marines would already be on the table, I think it's more likely you'll use this for them. But if your Terminators were on the table, you can use this for them. You could potentially try to get this off, I guess, if you think where your opponent's deep strike units are going to come in, or their reserve units are going to come in. You could potentially put these Terminators down, anticipating that. If you think they're going to come in from a certain board edge, you could deploy these Terminators specifically to be there to shoot them when they come on. Maybe, I'm not sure. I don't think I'm smart enough to do that sort of thing, but you might be. We've got Selfless automata. Now this is one you're going to use for Terminators. I said that I don't think you're going to really bother doing this with Rubric Marines, because they just don't really have any combat ability. They're just Marines punching you. But the Terminators, the Scarab Occult Terminators, this stratagem really is for them. If there was a Arcana Astartes character that's been charged, you can choose a unit of Rubric Marines or Scarab Terminators to heroically intervene. Now they have a 12-inch heroic intervention when they do this, and they can move 2d6 inches. Obviously, you're not going, unless it's like just game changing, you're not going to bother wasting your time actually going for an 11 or 12-inch one. But if they're maybe even 6 inches away, 7 inches away, 8 inches away, it's a sizable range. And even if they're only 2 or 3 inches away, they can't normally heroically intervene. So it is a really useful one for you to do, and just splurge a bunch of Terminators in there, get in the charge. That's like 4 attacks each, I think, maybe three attacks each. Strength 5, damage 2. They're going to really just wade in and hack down. Whatever it is that was threatening your psyche. I think it's a really good one to have. Some people do try to be quite sneaky these days. Make sure they only charge certain targets, so that you can't either heroically intervene with a character, or if they're going after a character specifically, they make sure they're out of engagement range with any units that are nearby them. People try to be quite sneaky like that these days, so this is a really nice one to have in the bag in case anybody is thinking they're going to get a cheeky solo charge off against your sorcerer with their character, whatever it might be, just slipping through a gap that you maybe had a bit of an oversight. Or maybe it's a trap. Maybe you wanted them to try to get the solo charge through the gap that you left on purpose, just so you can spring this. Who knows? But it's a good one, and it's probably going to come up in your games. You have Soul Reap, of course, same as the Rubric Marines. It's 1 command point. I think it's better on units of Terminators. If I was going to use this, I'd do this on a big unit of 10 Terminators, because you can have 2 Soul Reaper cannons in a 10-man Terminator unit, so you'd get more value out of this. You would, instead of doubling the shots of the cannon, from 5 to 10, you'd actually end up getting 20 shots instead of 10. If you were to use this on a unit of Terminators against a unit size of 11 or more. But if you did have unit size of 11 or more and you popped this in addition to your Stormbolter shots, you would have 20 strength 6, AP 5, damage 1 attacks coming out of these two Soul Reaper cannons. Absolutely crazy. He could probably just fire those 2 cannons at whatever unit is that's 11 plus, and then put your combi bolters somewhere else and split fire and still reliably kill most stuff. It's a really good one, I think. I don't think it's going to come up very often, at least for me, because I don't take units of 10 Terminators that often, and I also don't tend to encounter units of more than 11 other enemy models very often, because there just don't seem too many Horde units around. Like I said in the last video, I think even the Orc player that I know has gone to units of 10 now that mob rules change, because they don't want to have to deal with leadership and morale tests and attrition and that sort of thing. So Don't know how often it's going to come up, but it's nice to have. And the last unit in the elite section is the Tzaangor Shaman. Not a unit that I own, not a unit that I've ever used or have a plan to use. If you wanted more psychic powers, another psychic character to do more psychic powers in an elite slot, then I guess you could pay 70 points and get one of these. It mainly exists to buff your Tzaangors. It has a 6-inch aura of +1 to hit. So, you know, if you were running Tzaangors, whether it's regular Tzaangors on foot or the Tzaangor Enlightened on their discs, you'd probably take one of these to go along with them, because +1 to hit's pretty good. The Fate Caster Great Bows hit on 2s anyway, but the other weapons, the Divining Spears I think they're called, or the regular Tzaangor Ritual Blades and that sort of thing, +1 to hit's nice. You know, if you were running Tzaangors, you would take this to get +1 to hit, of course you would. He's pretty good, you know, he can do one spell and deny one spell. There is a relic, Chalice I think it is, where he can choose another spell. It doesn't let him manifest another spell, although I think that he can be affected by the stratagem that allows you to cast one more spell. Let me just check that before I say it and it's completely wrong. It's the Great Sorcerer. Yeah, 1000 Sun Psyker, so he can know up to 2 powers plus Smite, plus Smite with the relic, and if you wanted to you could spend a CP that would allow him to cast both powers. So potentially 2 powers a turn, 1 Dispel a turn. He buffs your Tzaangors, and I suppose it's ultimately just a way to squeeze in another sorcerer into your list without taking up a HQ slot or paying 200 points for a unit of Scarab Terminators to get the aspiring sorcerer there. Could also be, a fairly decent sort of disposable character for going after psychic ritual type objectives. You know, if you were trying to, he's only 70 points and he has a 12-inch move with fly, so he can zip around the board pretty well, ignoring terrain, that sort of thing. Could be quite good for getting psychic objectives. There is obviously psychic ritual. You know, you might want to have him waiting around in case your main psychic ritual guy dies for some reason. He could zip over and start doing it himself. Maybe he's been hiding behind a rock somewhere, behind a building, and he can just pop out and take over the ritual if he's necessary. The fact that he has good movement of 12 inches with fly means that he is quite good for achieving the psychic ritual action they have. It's called Warp. Well, no, it's in the Warpcraft section. It's called Mutate Landscape. It's a Warp Charge 4. And basically you have to cast this within range of each objective, and each time you do it you get 3 victory points for doing it. So units like him could, be good for zipping around the board, getting psychic actions like that, getting victory points. That maybe your slower units of Rubric Marines, they're struggling maybe to get around the board, or you don't want them that close to the enemy because of course, you will have some objectives in your zone, some in the middle, some in the opponent's zone. If you don't have any Scarab Occult Terminators that are going to take the ones in your opponent's zone, or you don't want to waste their powers because they're important, and you don't want to get your Rubric Marines that close, you could have sacrificial 70 point Tzaangor Shamans to just kind of zip around the place, use terrain to hide, and then pop out, cast the psychic action that you want them to cast, and then maybe die because maybe they did it in the opponent's zone. They just zoomed up there, casted their 3 victory point psychic action in their opponent's zone, and then just get killed. And it doesn't matter because they're just some 70 point single elite's choice slot. I think that could be a decent use for them. I'm never going to use them personally. I don't want Tzaangors in my army, but I could definitely see the tactical advantages of using one of these, or maybe even 3 of these, because again, if you had a couple of them, if you were going after those specific objectives, maybe, but I'm not going to bother myself, and that's up to you. Fast attack is next, so we'll get to that in the next video. So just the 3 units for today. Thank you if you watched this far. Hope it was something to think about. If you have any opinions, any thoughts, any things I'm wrong about, let me know in the comments, and I'll see you for Fast Attack, which I think you've maybe got 2 choices in this books, and then Heavy Support, which I'm most excited about, not even because of the Thousand Suns, but because of what it means for regular Chaos Space Marines. I got to talk about these Demon Engines because they're coming next year sometime, maybe they're coming, and my Iron Warriors are going to love them. So yeah, thank you, and I'll see you tomorrow, maybe, hopefully.